Hey guys, I'm Chris Buck and a very warm welcome to Friday Fretworks, and this week we're going to address the elephant in the room, money. How do I survive and earn a living as a musician? Now, of all the questions and requests I receive on pretty much a daily basis, tabs, backing tracks, my right hand, my left hand, pedals, pedal boards, amp setups, etc., something that I get incredibly frequently, tends to be in private messages on Instagram or on Facebook, is how I make money as a musician. It's clearly something that intrigues a lot of you guys, but maybe you're too scared to ask out in the open. After all, for those outside of the industry, or even some in it, or some looking to get into it, how to make money or how to survive as a professional musician is a little bit of a dark art. Every musician in the world wants you to think that they're doing better than they are, and consequently it can be the elephant in the room, which nobody really addresses: how to make money and survive as a professional musician. Now, in light of how hard 2020 was for musicians in particular, and in light of how hard it looks like 2021 is going to continue to be for musicians, I thought now would be a good opportunity to talk about some of my experiences in this industry and offer a few pieces of advice that, honestly, I wish I'd been given when I was younger. Number one, you are your own responsibility. Now, for whatever reason in the music industry, arguably more so than many other industries, there seems to be an expectation that in order to be successful, you have to involve other people. Booking agents, managers, labels, marketing teams, strategists, etc. Now, I've spoken about this in the past, but in my late teens, I was incredibly fortunate to strike up a friendship with Alan Niven. Alan, amongst many other things, was the manager of Guns N' Roses between 1986 and 1991 and was incredibly instrumental in their progression from a ramshackle Sunset Strip band through to a slightly less ramshackle stadium-filling band. In the most literal sense, Alan has been there, done it, and bought the tour t-shirt. Alan was incredibly generous with his time and really went out of his way to answer every inane question I could throw at him, whether it was about Slash, guitars, guns, the industry, or whatever I had. And something that he was incredibly keen to instill in me from a very early point is to take responsibility for my own career. Nobody cares about you as much as you do. At present, I don't have a manager, which means I answer my own emails, I deal with brand inquiries, I liaise with the companies I work with, I shoot and edit my own videos, I manage my online store and website, I run my social media channels in a way which I feel is responsible and in keeping with my brand. I do everything. Now, obviously, this isn't the only way of doing things, but for me, it's an essential part of having made a conscious decision for, at least the time being an independent musician. There's a direct correlation between how long I've been doing all of the above, the better I've become at them, and ultimately how much more successful I've become during that period. Take responsibility for yourself, or at least have the capacity to manage multiple parts of your career. As I said, ultimately nobody cares about you as much as you do. My second piece of advice is one that kind of comes as a consequence of the first piece of advice, and that is to understand the business. Now, of course, none of us started playing guitar to worry about royalty rates or percentage splits or deals of any kind, really. But having at the very least a rudimentary understanding of as many facets or as many parts of the business or industry as you can is a great bit of advice, and is as easily applicable whether you're already filling arenas or just about to self-release your first EP. It's a story as old as time itself. Musicians screwed by label, musicians screwed by manager, musicians screwed by accountant, or someone they thought they could trust. Again, that expectation that other people will always have your best interests at heart and will care as much about your music and your career as you do could be a recipe for disaster. That's not to denigrate record labels or any third parties in particular. You only have to look at the current top 40 to see the impact and influence that record labels still do have on this industry. But, as I said, if you are letting anyone else involved or take any level of control in your career or of your music, remember that they're not solely doing it out of the goodness of their heart, irrespective of what they say. And having, at the very least, a cursory understanding of what is going on and understanding as much as humanly possible about any deals that you do sign, going to make you infinitely less likely to be taken for a mug. My third piece of advice is one that, as initially demoralising as it may sound, is undoubtedly the best thing that I've ever done, and that is a river of pennies. Now, what I mean by this is having multiple sources of income. For example, it's been a good few years now since I've been solely reliant on playing guitar in front of a crowd to earn my living, which, in light of everything that's happened in 2020, has proven to be a rather good decision or a good situation to be in. Passive income, in essence, earning money for work you have done previously, which in my case is anything from tabs to backing tracks to the Helix presets to royalty rates on tuitional DVDs or signature products, previous episodes of Friday Fretworks, etc., form a big part of my wage. And subsequently, it's meant that I've maintained financial viability throughout a period where so many musicians that I know have really struggled. Couple that with the work that I do for the brands that I deal with, whether we're talking Fender, Yamaha, Line 6 or Victory, in person at events like NAMM last year or the Fender Clinics last year, or online obviously for the past couple of months, writing columns for guitar magazines, tuitional stuff when I have the time, the odd pedal demo here and there or product demo, streaming revenue, record sales, guest lecturing at universities, making YouTube videos, etc. All of this means that when one of my sources of income, like gigging, is taken away overnight, it's not totally devastating. Now, I appreciate this is a pretty lucky position to be in, but not to sound too glib about it, you make your own luck, and I've worked immensely hard over the last few years to put myself in such a position. Ultimately, as harsh as it sounds, you reap what you sow. Number 4, have realistic expectations. If you're of my generation or older, odds on you picked up your chosen instrument because you wanted to emulate your heroes. And odds on those heroes were rock stars. Big shows, big album sales, big bucks. But unfortunately, during the course of my lifetime alone, there's been a fundamental shift away from the old model of simply being able to release music as a potential way of earning a living. Sadly, the days of artists like Kate Bush, who by all accounts would release music and then refuse to tour it, are long gone. And we've all heard the horror stories of how much or how little streaming services like Spotify and Apple Music actually pay artists. And as much as I may want to rail and kick and scream against all of that, ultimately there's only so far the King Canute approach will take you. Understanding and managing your expectations as to what the definition of a successful modern day musician actually is crucial to being content with your place in the industry. In a perfect world, I would write, record and release music, maybe an album or two a year, tour it, which coupled with record sales and merchandise sales would be enough to comprise my wage. As we've spoken about, this isn't currently the case and doesn't look like it may be for a while, but this is ultimately my end goal. The upside to all of this is that the further down this road I go and the more established I become within the industry, it's enabled me to start phasing out one or two of the elements of my job which maybe I enjoyed the least. Now, Pete Thorne has done a brilliant video on this on his YouTube channel in his series So You Want to Be a Pro Musician, where he talks about the move that he made when he was younger to Los Angeles, which, as most musicians who make that move had, dreams of being a guitarist in an original rock band. Now, as he quickly realised, as most do, doesn't necessarily put bread on the table for a very long time, so diversified and became a sideman. Obviously, he'd be the first to tell you this wasn't necessarily what he'd moved to LA with the dream of doing, but it's turned into an incredibly cool way of making a living. And Pete, A tremendous musician as he is, has played with some of the biggest names in the industry, from Chris Cornell to Melissa Etheridge to Don Henley. Ultimately, that ability or that willingness to diversify is infinitely preferable to just banging your head against the wall that things haven't really turned out as you planned. Ultimately, nobody owes you a living. And lastly, at number 5, do it for the right reasons. I watched a brilliant interview with Josh Homme from the Queens of the Stone Age a few years ago, actually, where the biggest piece of advice he had for aspiring musicians really resonated with me, and that is do it because you love it. Do it because you have this underlying compulsion or desire to make music or create art. If your starting point is anywhere other than that, or you're getting into it because of fame or fortune, or any other kind of disingenuous reason, honestly, you won't last. There will be times when it's infinitely easier just to knock it on the head, get a sensible job with a normal pay packet where you don't have to worry about maybe where your next meal is coming from. It's that knowledge and that just inner drive that you know that this is why you were put on this planet, to make music, that will make the perseverance so much easier. If you don't have that, don't get into it. If you do, you will find a way. It's human nature. I think that's probably a good place to leave it. So as ever, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope there was some maybe useful bits of advice in there somewhere along the line. As I said, 2020 has been such a hard year for musicians that it would be remiss of me, I think, just to maybe not offer some of the pieces of advice, which, as I said, I wish I'd had when I was younger. As ever, you're watching Friday Fretworks. Please subscribe, hit the bell icon if you haven't already. I promise next week's video will have infinitely more guitar playing in it. As ever, I'm Chris Buck. I shall see you soon.